Hello everyone and welcome to a review on Jawbreakers God King. So I've been waiting for this book for a while now. This actually came out much faster than the Jawbreakers Lost Souls campaign came out. And this is concluding the three-part story of God King that was started all the way back from when we had this art style. For those of you who were there for the Lost Souls review, I wasn't in it for Lost Souls, I was in it for the God King story, so I was excited to see this concluded. First, I kind of want to talk about like the physical quality of the book in general, then I'll go into the actual story, what I thought about it, along with the extra stories that were also included in this God King print. Now first off, I gotta say, I always enjoy it to see a fellow person with OCD lining everything up a very similar way to how it was done in the first book. All that being said, I think the interior, the pages, feel so much better in Lost Souls than they do with God King. These pages, they feel kind of thin, they have this texture to them. And I remember a lot of people complaining about Cyberfrog because the pages were wavy when they came out. This kind of has the same problem, not as severe as the problem that I've seen with Cyberfrog. But you can definitely feel waviness with some of the pages, so it is kind of a downgrade. You can see that Lost Souls is clearly thicker than God King turned out to be. Now, let's get into the actual story of God King. I'm not going to entirely go over it piece by piece like I do with the other comic reviews. This review will contain spoilers. I feel a lot better reviewing stuff when I can just shout out all the spoilers. I don't really like spoiler-free reviews. It feels too restrictive for me. So obviously I loved it, right? That's why the thumbs up is on the thumbnail. We got some robo fights, we got some characters dying. A little disappointed that you killed off Hell Priest. So I am always down for a mech fight. I thought this was pretty fun. So God King in general, he's a pretty cool villain. The idea is that he has gained these superpowers and he aims to become a god by essentially acting like a dick his whole life. A very fine accomplishment, I must say. It's very difficult to do that. So the actual fight between Silkworm and God King, it can basically be summarized as, you know that meme where the two characters are just constantly teleporting behind each other like, you've underestimated my abilities. No, you've underestimated my abilities. No, you've underestimated my abilities. And that just goes on and on forever. Silkworm thinks that he's outsmarted God King. God King thinks that he's outsmarted Silkworm. And it just goes like that for a while until finally one of them wins. It is kind of comedic, I will not deny. Even more comedic, I thought, was this little speech that Silkworm gives to explain how he outsmarted him. There's always that hero thing where they have a whole speech explaining how they knew a certain bit of information, and it's always really funny when it's super long and convoluted. Like, there's never one sentence that explains how they knew something. It's always gotta be a story. It's very typical of comics and anime to have that type of speech, but I feel like there's a lot of things you can show without telling. I think the side plot with Knife Hand and, coming to fight his dad and face him for the first time was really interesting. I'm a little bit disappointed that it doesn't have that much of a conclusion to it, though. I would hope that it would maybe get picked up later, but yeah, that's something to think on, I guess. There's a lot of things that happen in this last issue for the Jawbreakers story, and it feels like you're shoving in all that information in a very few amount of pages. So when I sat down to read this thing, it just kind of felt like it was all over very quickly. It also kind of has a slow beginning, which I think contributes to that. You start off really slow and all of a sudden everything is happening at once. I appreciated the ending. I think it's always nice to have a kind of ending where a father's returning home. Reuniting with family is always like that feel-good moment, and it does feel good after a chaotic story like this to have some sense of peace and happiness. And if there's one technique I think that more writers of comics should probably be taking from manga, it's the idea of having bigger panels for very slow scenes. Take up more space for a scene that's supposed to be slow, because if you're taking up more space, then the reader is going to be reading it more slow. So it allows the audience to be more in the moment with you when it comes to these types of scenes. This in general, I could have probably split this into two, being like a especially big panel for the hug, because I imagine that the hug is like, you know, that moment. You want to stay in that moment. You want it to visually take up a lot of space. That's how it is in my mind anyway. That being said, this is fine. It just flew a little bit fast. And that's the conclusion of the God King story, but we have much, much more. Yes, we do. So the next story is basically a spin-off from the Lost Souls story, bringing back Sashi and making her into a cyborg herself. I loved this. I loved this side story. Almost more than God King conclusion, honestly. Of course, I got that nice Sashi pinup that goes with this. Awesome. But yeah, if you were going to bring a dead character back to life, making them a killer cyborg is definitely the way to do it. And the art in this side story is very different, very good, but definitely very different. I'm honestly not sure which I like better. I might say God King art style I like better just because I think it more so fits. It's a lot more gritty, square, very hard lines, I guess I would say. And this one is a little bit, I think, softer lines, softer features. Very soft features indeed. Now I do have to mention this because, oof, that does not look super good. Her nose touching the spine like that. Ugh. I would have turned this face around. I never like it when the faces are touching the spine like that. Maybe it would have been fine if it was off the page, but it doesn't look good. I would have definitely done some moving around to fix that. It's nicely drawn, but I really don't like that. Especially because, you know, the spine is actually like printed fairly close with the art. So this is especially close up, too close for comfort, I would say. And I like the conclusion to it, too, because it goes to show you, oh, the beginning wasn't a waste of time. It came into play. I don't know, I like stories like that, where the beginning comes into play later. The idea is they're transporting this virtual reality thing, and they use it to stop her from attacking and keep her into this fantasy world, where she believes she's, you know, living a good life. And the idea is they keep her in a loop in this virtual reality until they can figure out a better option of what to do with her. Now, I don't know if anyone else watched just some guy's review. He came out with a review before people even got the book, which I guess is a little bit frustrating because he immediately, without warning, just starts spoiling everything at the beginning of his video. But I guess I'm guilty of doing the same thing. So he confused me because he said that Sashi died. She didn't die, though. I mean, I guess she looks dead in that last panel, but the idea is that she's in this virtual reality. Never says that they kill her. They even make a joke at the end. I don't know if they would make a joke if she was dead. But no, after reading this, I actually probably would have been disappointed if she had just died at the end, because I like it this way. I like the idea that you're keeping her alive and keeping the option to bring her in any other story. Because, I mean, you have a killer cyborg here. Don't waste that opportunity. And what's even more, it's also very interesting how she's dealing with being brought back to life as a cyborg. You know, she's blaming the Jawbreakers, like, why didn't you bury me if you knew that I was dead? Why did you let me become this, you know? And I enjoyed it a lot. So definitely keep this option open. I mean, maybe she could become a Jawbreaker. Who knows? So next we have the Devil Dog origin story. And this was actually not written by Richard. This was by Chuck Dixon. Now, I didn't notice at first that the last two stories were by Chuck Dixon. So I noticed that the writing was different for Devil Dog origin. And I was thinking to myself, man, this is really weird. Richard must be like off the ball today or something. And then I look at the back and I'm like, oh, he didn't write it. That makes more sense. So the Devil Dog origin story did not do it for me. It's not that I don't like Chuck Dixon, I just didn't like this. First of all, it's kind of weird because Devil Dog is, not that primary of a character in Jawbreakers. I've always just kind of seen him as, the sarcastic background guy who I guess does whatever the story needs him to do. But in this origin story, the amount of edge that comes from Devil Dog is... I feel like there are a lot of jokes in here that are supposed to be funny, and it's kind of like when someone makes a joke at a party and you instinctively laugh out of politeness, but in your head you're just thinking to yourself, oh God. So that was basically me reading this. I was just kind of politely laughing and I caught myself and I'm like, damn it, Trisha, this isn't funny. I even kind of questioned if they were supposed to be jokes, if there was some kind of serious undertone behind them that I just missed and assumed was a joke. And the narration was probably the worst for me. I mean, I had a lot of suspension of disbelief at the ending where he's just magically not getting shot by anyone, but all the wounds that they list at the end of the story, no gunshot wounds. None. Like most stories, this is slow at the beginning and then all of a sudden just picks up at the end and then it's over. I don't know, I didn't like Devil Dog in this one. It didn't do it for me, and I'm not really sure why he was the pick for an origin story. I think I might have preferred anyone else on the Jawbreakers, but that's just me. If you're a Devil Dog fan and if you like Chuck Dixon, you'll probably like this story. And then there was another story by Chuck Dixon in this book, and it has nothing to do with the Jawbreakers. It's actually Desolation Wave. It's a short story about these humans, genetically modified humans. I did not get that when I was first reading this. I had to read the back in order to understand that they were supposed to be genetically modified humans. I was very confused. So these guys are dying. These are their slaves. They treat their slaves bad. So you know how Richard always says in his videos that he has a rule: if you're on the cover, if your name's on the cover, then you have to do something cool in the book. I kind of have another rule similar to that. I say, if Jawbreakers is the name of the book, then the stories in the book have to do with Jawbreakers. And this is the only one. This is the only one out of this entire book. There's 4, and this is the only one that has absolutely nothing to do with Jawbreakers. It's weird. I guess the idea is, I don't know, you like Chuck Dixon, you wanted to spotlight his book. All that being said, this is just another story from Chuck Dixon that didn't do it for me. I felt like at the end of this short story, I found myself asking, what am I supposed to take from this? Like, I got to the end, I didn't feel anything. I didn't have any takeaway from the story. Now, I get the idea, right? Okay. Rich, mean aliens, they hate their slaves for no reason, they just do. And the idea is because they hate their slaves so much, they decide to give them their planet, all their wealth on the planet, because the idea is being rich is a burden, like they're now slavery to their work, I guess. It's well drawn, well colored. I don't know what I'm supposed to feel. Sad? Happy? Sorry, Chuck. I know, you got all this experience in the industry, but these probably not your best. I'm probably the only one with that opinion. Watch all the comments section fill up with, how could you say that? We all have our own opinions, I get it. For me, personally, these were not the best that I've read of Chuck Dixon's work. These, however, were awesome. Good job, Richard. So, ladies and gentlemen, that is the Jawbreakers story right there. Don't you love how this is all cornered and then this is right in the middle where it clearly is supposed to be? Look at the size difference of these. It's like wimpy, 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 hefty, hefty, hefty. Because, you know, it kind of goes with the cover. They're being thrown up in the air. They're kind of at an angle here. You would expect the logo also being on its side just flows with the rest of the action. Although it is funny having them side by side like that. So we do have more Jawbreakers books coming out in the future, as is stated by the thank you, Luna, for being cute and being on the back of my books page. We got Jawbreakers Grand Bazaar. Nice name right there. Although I can't read that and not think of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. Bizarre has now been copyrighted by JoJo. I can't get it out of my head. And the idea is it tells the story about how the team was formed, and then there's also a backup story focusing on Hell Priest before he joined the... Why didn't you do a Hell Priest story for God King? I would have liked that. Whatever. Saving the best for last, guys. That's what it is. For another Jawbreakers book, I would definitely be thinking about bringing back our titty cyborg lady over here. You have the opportunity. You have the technology. Those are some thoughts that I have on the Jawbreakers God King book. By all means, be sure to let me know what you personally think about this book down below in the comments, whether it be thoughts on quality, thoughts on stories, thoughts on the random alien story at the end. Let me know what you think. And of course, as usual, thank you guys for watching. You are such a treat. I will see you next time. Bye!
Program restart.